This is a bottle of Prophecy beer. Believe it or not, it can predict on any given night whether or not you're going to get lucky. See, sometimes it doesn't have very much head on it, but then sometimes it does. And when it does, look out.
This is where Prophecy beer was born. And this is where, several months later, it almost died. But it didn't die, not quite. And eventually, a bunch of people with nothing better to do with 3 hours on a Sunday morning got together to shoot a handful of commercials for a beer that did not exist. If it feels like I've left something out, I have. That's kind of the point. My name is Vance Catrola, and I'm an independent filmmaker. You probably have not heard of me. I've written and directed a feature film and about a dozen short films, of which Prophecy Beer is my most recent. After I finished editing it, I thought it would be kind of fun to do a making-of documentary. And here's why. This shot does not exist. And I don't mean that in an abstract digital perception versus objective reality kind of way. I mean, this shot does not exist. It's a fabrication. It's a composite shot, and I was proud of it. And it was born out of necessity. A little bit skillful manipulation and a little bit of dumb luck. The more I started thinking about it, the more I came to believe in this shot as a metaphor. Necessity plus a little skill plus dumb luck equals art. But my metaphor is missing something. Life. And if necessity is the mother of invention, then life itself is the mother of necessity. It took a living human being to realize the need for leverage, and so the fulcrum was invented. It's the same thing with the Mona Lisa. So the idea was to do a documentary, something disposable to be tucked into a special features menu on a DVD somewhere, about what you'd see if you dissected a short film, if you were able to part the skin and look at the bones and the organs and the tissues that lend it its form and its function. I wanted to paint a small picture of the flaming hoops we sometimes have to jump through in order to turn even the simplest of ideas into something more, a picture of the barriers we have to overcome in order to turn thought into reality. And though I assumed that such a simple thing would prove exceedingly simple and linear in the telling, I was wrong. See, I was looking for a single moment of genesis that made a short film possible, a butterfly beating its wings in California that would cause a monsoon in China, but I didn't find it. I thought it was this, but I was wrong. The more I looked, the less I saw an event, and the more I saw a place. A city, partially, but more a place in that city. This. Less a building than an idea. Less a home than the life that it contained. I was living in Austin, here. This house has a better filmography than I do. When I lived here, I was doing a lot of writing and a lot of narrative filmmaking. I was doing all of this creative stuff, but I was also doing some slightly less creative stuff for money.
Can I get you guys some more water? No? Oh, okay.
The creative stuff led me to a film festival, where I thought I would get famous, because some people there liked a screenplay I'd written. Wrong. But it also led me to the assistant to the screenplay competition director. The assistant was a girl with a name whose pronunciation I could not derive from the arrangement of its letters. Such a unique name that it tripped something in my brain, and I remembered having seen it sometime earlier. Because I'd been in a death metal band, I could make my throat do terrible things. That got me a part in a video game, playing a dinosaur. The company making the video game was slow on their disbursement of compensation, so I found myself at my agent's office to inquire about said disbursement. And on my agent's assistant's desk was a headshot. A lot of headshots, but this one was on top. Of a very pretty girl with a name whose pronunciation I could not derive from the arrangement of its letters. So now, at this film festival, I remember the pretty girl because I am good at that, and I remember the name. Rainy. That's important. You need to remember that for the rest of the story to make any sense at all. The creative stuff led me to Rainy, and the not-so-creative stuff led me to a job in Houston. Since the film festival was now over, Rainy needed a job too. So we wound up both taking jobs in Houston working for the same company and the same man. He was not a good man. But before I knew that he was a bad man, he promised me a lot of things that would happen because of this new job of mine, so I bought a house. This house. My house. My first. Rainey and I moved the 150 or so miles to Houston, me into my new house, and she into an apartment some distance away. A couple of days after we moved, we found an English pub-style bar. It was near my house. We liked it because they had Guinness on tap, and they had a dartboard. But my move to Houston severed my ability to make movies with my longtime collaborators, Don, Krausen, and Cameron, who all remained at the house in Austin. Lots of people lived there in the few years that my parents owned it and used it as a rent house. When I realized that my new job was nothing but smoke and mirrors, I quit, which left me in a precarious situation. I had no job, and I had a house to pay for. I had to start over as a freelance video producer in a city where I had no contacts. I soon did make contact, though, with a company that I liked, and I still like. They're called Video Perspective. They had Emmys and worked with sports teams. I was now able to pay for my house, thanks to my freelance work and the tedious odd job here and there. Then a cat showed up. He was skinny and starving and needed both food and love. Rainey named him Thomas, and he moved in. Then he got lonely, so I got him a baby sister. Her name is Pumpkin, and she is the cutest thing in the world. In my shower one day, I got what I thought was a funny idea. The idea of a beer that would get a lot of head on it if its bearer were fated to get lucky with a member of the opposite sex. I imagined the commercials, and I laughed. Thanks to its, none too subtle sexual metaphor, I thought it would make a good parody of your average beer commercial, with its only slightly less subtle claims of sexual conquest. I told Rainey my funny idea, and she liked it, said something like,
"That's really funny. Why don't you write it up as a short film?"
Pay attention, because we're starting to weave threads that will someday intersect.